in Beckert's gun shop in Coloma, California, and this is the building that Jules Francois Beckert built. He came across the Isthmus of Panama in 1849, arrived in San Francisco on April 1st of 1849 with 400 pistols to sell. He was a gunsmith, and he plied his gunsmithing trade out here, did quite well with it, sold the pistols and made a fair amount of money. He also was a gold miner, part-time. And he was a veteran of the Mexican-American War, which occurred in 1846 to 1848. Upon discharge from the Army, he immediately heard of the gold being discovered in California. He went back to New York to visit his parents and his girlfriend, and then he immediately turned around and came out here as a pioneer. As a veteran, he served with the Veterans Association out here, and we just recently acquired 2 medals that he has. And in fact, we have a picture of him here with wearing those 2 medals. And we also acquired the gold pouch that he had when he was out here in California. That's down there in the case. And then also we have a picture of him that was taken on his wedding day in 1851. And these are all recently acquired additions to our artifacts collection here in Coloma, here at the Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park.
The mail was started here in 1849. The first postmaster was assigned the task. His name was John Doolittle. He didn't want the job. He was a merchant already, but he was assigned this, and he had to pay a clerk $400 a month to help with the postal service. Letters, when they came, approximately once a month. Sometimes longer in the winter months, sometimes up to 4 months. It just depended on the snows over the Sierra Nevada. When they came, he had to charge the miners $1 a letter, so as you could imagine, there were a lot of letters that were not picked up. The only thing that varied is how the mail got here, so whether it was over the Sierra Nevadas by ship through Panama or down the southern route through New Mexico in that area.
In the Weller house. So the first thing I like to do is show you this wall right here. And if you look at the wood, it's rather wide. The wood was milled here in Coloma. And notice the width on these baseboards. And of course, square nails were used because, of course, that's what they had back then. The wood throughout the house is in different widths. Some might be larger, some might be smaller, some might be vertical, some might be horizontal. So, but this is original to the Weller house also. Here is some of the wallpaper. Here's another layer, and what's interesting is this one.
Why was it?
We don't know. Any suggestions as to why?
Maybe they didn't
Two-sided?
Except for it all to be gone on this side, I don't know.
The print was on the,
Yeah.
put the print
On the
at
inside.
the wall, up against the wall.
But the
So-
lady of the house didn't like it.
Maybe, and then some ladies have said maybe the husband didn't like it, put it on backwards. So I really don't know why. So discussion there. This home was built about 1850. This is original in the hall. That room is original. We use it for
And
storage.
this is original.
This is original, and this room is original in here. So we're going to go in here next. I'll tell you a bit more about it. Okay, you're welcome to sit on the furniture. Okay, none of the furniture is original to the house, but the floor is original. The carpets came from the governor's mansion in Sacramento. The windows are original also, the wavy glass. So Mr. Weller moved to Coloma about 1852, but this was known as several businesses before Mr. Weller acquired it. This was the Brammer House, this was the St. Louis Exchange, this was the New Orleans Restaurant and Oyster Bar, it was the Orleans Hotel. So this was several establishments. When the Brammer brothers had it, I believe their names were Fred and John, their advertisement was that you would get the best food, fresh best food, and that the beds were always clean. And miners would sometimes lodge here, and they would pool their money together to be able to share a warm bed. The stairs were on the outside of the building. They're no longer there, but when you leave, if you look on the outside of the building up on top, you'll see a little window where that lodging area was. And you've heard the expression head to toes or nose to toes. And it came about from that's how they slept in bed. Several miners, maybe 5, 6, would share the bed, and they'd all sleep head to toe. So that doesn't sound appealing to me, but you know what? It was a way for them to keep warm and get a nice bed at a cheaper rate. So as I said, Mr. Weller came to Coloma about 1852. He married Katie Borland on Christmas of 1864. And in 1865, he purchased this, and they turned it into their home. And they lived here almost 30 years, and they raised 4 children here. They raised Katie, Jenny, Elias, and Charles. And if you look across the street through this window, just past my husband, there is a sign across the street, and that is actually where Mr. Weller's business was. He had a variety and hardware store, and he was a very successful merchant in town. So that's where his business was. So we do believe this was their kitchen area, dining area. As I said, the Wellers lived here almost 30 years, and in 1894 they moved to Sacramento. And Mr. Caldwell purchased this. Ralph Caldwell and Elmer Caldwell also did some renovations in it around 1922. And we do believe 1920, 1930 is when this kitchen was added on. And you'll be going through that, so you'll be able to see it. And John Hume purchased this in 1930. And then in 1948, a Leland Borland acquired the house. He inherited it, actually. So we are assuming he was a relative of Katie Borland, Mr. Weller's wife. And in 1957, the Gold Discovery Park Association, the Marshall Gold Discovery Park, purchased they acquired the house. And then in 1958, they were able to purchase 52 acres for $9,750. So the park continued to grow. Today, the Weller House, it's kept the name the Weller House. Mr. Weller did so much in helping establish Coloma. They lived here a long time. They were a good family in the community. Here we have an actual picture of the Wellers in front of their home. There's Mr. Weller, his wife, their 4 children. And it was common in those days to be able to photograph your wagon and horse in front of your home. It showed that you had money. Here. Hey guys. Here.
Welcome to the Papini house. So the house here was built in 1891. The house that we're standing in now, and it was a wedding present actually to Dorcas and her husband Joseph Papini. Mr. Papini was born in Italy in 1859. They were married in 1891, and it was her grandfather who built this house for them. When Dorcas got married to Mr. Papini, she was 14 years old, and he was 35 years old. Which was not that uncommon at that time. That's right. He was very successful. He had been a gardener down in Sacramento, and then eventually worked for Mr. Chalmers up at the vineyard and was his winemaker. Okay, so her grandfather, who was Luther Davis, came here during the gold rush in 1849 and worked as a miner. And then the first building on this location was his confectionery and bakery shop, and that was in 1853 that he built that. And so that was a shop, and they didn't live in the bakery. They actually had apparently a pretty nice house. The Davises did up the way. But we think maybe this window here came from the bakery, because it would be unusual to have such a large window in a house. This was more typical of the size, because glass, of course, was very expensive in 1891. Even when this was built, the window was still something that was pretty expensive to buy. Anyway, so Luther Davis and his wife built this for their granddaughter when she got married. And so the Papinis had 4 children, so a total of 6 people lived here in this house when the children were growing up. And when the state took it over, though, and decorated it as a historic home, they patterned it after 1913. You can see there's a picture over here of Annie Elchie, and she was their renter. So the Papinis kept this house, but moved into another, larger house themselves. And Annie Elchie rented it from them. And if you look closely at that photo, they reproduced everything, including the little crochet rug here. So Annie was a single woman, and in 1913, it was still pretty hard for single women to make a living. So she had a sewing machine in that room. She probably did sewing for people. And then also, she probably had a garden out back, we think, and she canned and sold her canned goods.
Hi, my name is Susan O'Key and I'm a Park Interpretive Specialist here at Marshall Gold, and you are going to be viewing the old Coloma Schoolhouse. The old Coloma Schoolhouse is not the building that you see. The old Coloma Schoolhouse actually started out as the courthouse that was on this property. And in 1857, the county seat was then moved up to Placerville, so the schoolhouse was the courthouse. Well, in 1919, after many years of use, that schoolhouse happened to be on fire on a Friday afternoon, and the parents of the community decided to go up the hill and see if they could purchase a new one, which they purchased this building. This building is the Slatington School. It was used by the miners, the slate miners' children up in Kelsey. And so we have had this school here since January of 1920 all the way up until 1958, when it ceased being an operational school. Inside the school you will notice that you have children who are from first grade all the way through 8th grade. The school is heated by one big stove, so it's a very cold building. The school has no lighting in it, and some people think that candles would be the option, but not really. You don't ever put a candle in a schoolhouse. You don't want a fire. So consequently, when the days get very dark and dreary and you can no longer see to read or write, you go home and you do your homework. Now, homework consists of what you need to do on your ranch and your farm. You never take your schoolwork home with you. Schoolwork is to be done in the school. Thanks for coming and visiting the old Coloma Schoolhouse.
First, well, and the Indian Wars were going on, so they weren't used to living around.
Someone will bring back memories. You went to a one-room schoolhouse. Nobody here? Yeah, I did. I did in Maine. That's where my parents grew up. But I love to tell the kids now. Can you imagine? You know, it's fun to be with older kids, but when you're sitting here and your brother's sitting over there, you know, there's a lot of. I think that's why school teachers probably always had a little flask in their pocket. You know, it was a rough time. Yeah. And when you arrived in the anteroom, you hung up your coats, you put your lunch pails out, and then you would come out, and the children were required to stand behind their desks, and you'll all love this. They would say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And then they'd lower the seat and sit down and start class. Yeah, lots of history.
Okay, right now you are in the anteroom of the old Coloma Schoolhouse, also known as the Slatington School. And what you see in the anteroom happens to be the lard pails that Mom saves for the children to use as lunch buckets. The same thing, Dad saves his cut plug tobacco tins. There's also a wash station here, a place to hang your coats and your jackets and put your boots, and the girls who wore dresses in those days would want to keep them clean, so they would put on a pinafore so they didn't get ink down the front of themselves. There's also a bucket over here with a dipper, and the dipper is for taking water over to either your cup or to the wash basin. You don't drink off the dipper like they used to do. We know now in 1925. These go into the holes in the desk, and a child would push with their finger to lift it up, and then use a dip pen to dip into the ink and do their writing. So that's how that works.
I think I used to use things.
You might have. We had the courthouse for the school. So this is not the original school. This is the second school from the property.
This is a rocker. That's a very long one. Most of them about the size out there, about 2 feet long. This would have been, you'd probably had a group of like 10 or 12 guys in a cabin this size, and they would have had a long piece of equipment like that.
Oh, what's the
It's all about how much dirt you can process.
Oh, to process the dirt? Yeah. You'd have 10
That's about all you could
people
get.
living in a cabin like this?
Nothing fancy. If you've been in the other homes yet, they're all the comforts of home. You really, as far as anything that you have today, minus electricity, yeah, they've got everything. They're beautiful homes.
Major sorts of heat, too.
They did.
Did they have windows?
They did have windows.
Yeah.
The reason the window panes that you see like this, that's how the windows came. It would be a box of glass panes, and you would be up to you to put them together yourself. It was a common skill most people know how to do, but there were window glazers, and that's what they did for a living, or a carpenter like James Marshall. He could put those together for you.
And then you bought the panes?
You bought the individual panes, yeah,
Okay.
that size and this size.
Okay.
These are original from the 1880s.
Wow, wow.
I don't think that's original glass. I think
Yeah.
they've been probably picked since then.
Yeah.
The frames are.
I've seen. Have you ever seen the old glass? It's kind
Yeah,
of wavy,
yeah,
and
yeah.
a table would be great. Wear your gold at the end of the day.